Welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the new Netflix film, The Pale Blue Eye. I am kicking myself for not going to see this in the theaters earlier. I think Netflix released it in the theaters either late last month or like at the beginning of this month. And I knew it was going to be streaming on Netflix today. So I waited and didn't go see it in theaters. And I so wish I had. I feel like this totally gives away what I think of it. I definitely enjoyed this one. This is the style of movie that I don't know I have seen something that would be the equivalent of The Pale Blue Eye since Johnny Depp's like Sleepy Hollow. It gives me the same kind of vibes. Now, this one is starring Christian Bale and Harry Melling, and Christian Bale has kind of been summoned, I guess, to West Point. They find a cadet hanging from the tree, and his heart has been cut out, and so they go to Christian Bale, and they ask him to kind of run this investigation and find out who's doing this, and they're worried that more cadets are going to go missing, and so Christian Bale kind of starts this whole long investigation into like who is killing these West Point cadets. And along the way, he enlists the help of Harry Melling, who is playing Edgar Allan Poe, like a young Edgar Allan Poe during his days at West Point. This story is not a true story. This is a completely fictional tale. So anyone who knows like historical stuff about Edgar Allan Poe is going to know that this is not something that Edgar Allan Poe did in his life. He was not helping investigate murders or anything of that nature. He did have like a pretty tragic life in real life, but this is not going to be part of it. I really, really liked this story. Now, for the majority of it, like there is kind of this twist to the ending, right? So you're watching the movie, it has a very nice sort of conclusion where I was like, oh, that's pretty decent. It's definitely got that sort of classic crime sort of thriller, dark thriller to it in the same way that Sleepy Hollow does. And for me, I was like starting to kind of formulate my thoughts and be like, oh, I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I can say is, well, I knew who the killer was pretty much from the beginning of the movie. And so it sort of tended to lag a little bit in some areas because I already knew who was doing it, like who had done this thing. So then when they reveal, oh, yes, it is, this person or who has done it, I was like, oh, well, that's, it's a nice wrap up and it's a good story. It's like a fun watch. And then I sort of noticed on the bottom of like the Netflix kind of banner, I guess, I was like, wait, there's still 30 more minutes left in this film. How can it be wrapped up neatly? I'm like, surely the credits are not going to be 30 minutes long. Like, I get Christian Bale is a big actor and this is a fairly, decent production. But I'm like, surely the credits can't be 30 minutes long. Well, the movie doesn't end where I thought it ended. There is this nice, I'm not going to say like M. Night Shyamalan twist because it's not that. But there is sort of additional bits to the story where it just took this twist that incredibly impressed me and took me by surprise. I was like, whoa. like back it up. That's what's going on here. I was very impressed with kind of how they did that storytelling. And I know this was like written for screen by a couple of people. So I am assuming, and I am not very familiar with this story, but I am assuming that it has to be, is it a book or something? I am not sure. Like I tried to look and kind of see where this story comes from. It is an awesome story. I will say like the only thing that if I had to kind of say, oh, I didn't like this one particular item about The Pale Blue Eye, it has really 0% to do with the movie itself. I think the production quality on this movie is great. I think the acting is great. It introduces some new faces to me that I had not like previously seen. I think Gillian Anderson is just chef's kiss in that, like, she doesn't have a very large part to this, but her character is just, for some reason, it just cracks me up. She's just kind of over the top in such a wonderful way that is very impressive. The only thing to kind of circle back around that I did not enjoy, that is not even really related to this movie at all, is that I am a fairly big fan. Like, I wouldn't say I was crazy about it or anything, but I am a pretty big fan of Edgar Allan Poe and his poetry and his writings and things. And I'd always sort of had, kind of an idea of what type of, person he was. In a way, it kind of reminds me of like when you're reading a book, let's say, and the author describes the character to you. And so you have this vision in your mind of what this character looks like, and then they adapt it to film and you're like, well, that's not at all what was happening in my brain. So in this movie, despite the fact that I know a little bit of history about Edgar Allan Poe and kind of where he grew up and who his parents were and that sort of thing, it had never occurred to me that in this film, like, Edgar Allan Poe he's going to talk. Obviously, he's going to. It's a film. And when he starts to talk, he has this sort of strange, I would gather slightly Southern accent, which I feel is probably fairly accurate to what, is realistic. But for some reason, like, thinking of his poetry in a Southern accent, I'm like, I can't. Like, I always had sort of pictured Edgar Allan Poe in like this, I had a vision, that's not the correct word, but like an interpretation of what I feel like he would have sounded like, in my mind. And this was not it. But that, I feel like, is the only like little nitpicky thing that I'm like, no, ruined forever for Edgar Allan Poe. But the movie itself is just lovely. It is lovely. It's definitely that sort of dark crime, thriller sort of murder mystery movie that I think is just lovely. Again, I think this one is not exactly the same in terms of, what is going on, but it definitely reminds me in the same vein of Johnny Depp's Sleepy Hollow. So if you enjoyed Sleepy Hollow, I think you will definitely enjoy The Pale Blue Eye. I would absolutely give it a watch if you have Netflix. And if you don't, I think this one is actually, theater worthy if you wanted to go and watch it there. Would highly recommend. Definitely enjoyed myself with this one. So wish I had started off the year with this one instead of A Man Called Otto, because this one is definitely better without question. So those are my thoughts on The Pale Blue Eye. I would love to know what you guys thought if you have seen this one. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family. You can find me on Instagram at Cinematic Sarcastic Podcast, and I hope to see you in the next episode.